How are you? All the way
Oh,
from Connecticut to Miami.
yeah, Honorio, it's a pleasure being here again with you. Let me say that it was really nice to be able to see you in person a couple of weeks ago at the MIT CIO Symposium in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it was just such a gift to all of a sudden, here is Honorio in the flesh.
I feel the same way, Irving, and it
And
was it was a nice experience. And I thank you. I thank you for really hosting me and for being available. I know how busy you
well,
are as an
it,
MIT fellow, part of the symposium. Uh,
it was very nice, and we sat together for 2 days and participated. But here we are in another podcast from two old Cuban technologists, and let's go ahead. And I really like the theme that you suggested. Um, and the theme you suggested was AI is here, either you prepare for it or you will be left outside. That was the theme you suggested. And I think it it it's absolutely the right theme, and I hope that you found that that was also one of the major messages in the MIT CIO Symposium from all the researchers and all the CIOs that participated.
no,
Here it is, and you better accept it and prepare.
right. I mean, first of all, the symposium was remarkable. I found the degree of the quality of the presenters was very impressive, from CIOs to vendors that are on the top of the consulting, and like McKinsey, and the fellow that Max Kahn, that won the CIO of the
Yeah,
year from Avnet. I had an opportunity to speak with them. As a matter of fact, we connected and we're speaking again in a week. So that was
that's
one
great.
one of many relationships that came out of
Yes.
that. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I tell you, Irving, sitting there and listening to all of what's going around in the media reaction, even at a graduation dinner the other day, speaking to a sixth grade teacher that hates AI and will not allow people to even say AI in the classroom, to the commencement speeches that were booed when the speakers
Yes.
mention AI, to what is really happening in the real world. It occurred to me that it would be uh, well uh, served to the community out there that you and I, as examples,
Yes.
and there's a quote out there that's attributed to Darwin, but it wasn't his quote about the strongest person is not necessarily the smartest. I mean, the survival is not necessarily the smartest or the strongest, but is the one that's the most adaptable.
That's
And
right. That's
it
perfect. That's an excellent quote.
yeah, it occurred to me that here we are,
Yeah.
70s, and we didn't sit back and say, oh, we're gonna get rolled over by AI.
Yes.
We said, what do we got to do? And by the way, as we had discussed before, we've done this a number of times. We did it with the
Yes.
internet. So you got all these young people out there, right? That are perhaps sad, worried, because AI is coming and all the predictions that their job may get wiped out or significantly modified. And what are you doing about it?
Yeah. I really like that you brought Darwin into this, because uh, if you look at the history of evolution, is when things change, the species that survive are those best able to adapt to the changes. You don't have to like the changes, but the changes, if they are inevitables, if they are inevitable, then the changes, you have to adapt to them. Now, as we're talking on audio, let's remind everybody in the podcast that we're not young. And in fact, you and I have now lived through, let me call it, three major technological revolution. May I go through them? Okay, is that okay?
Right. Yeah. Go through the three. There are actually seven, but three major ones. Go ahead.
Three major ones. So the first one was the computer revolution that, for me, and I assume for you, started in the 1960s, when computers started showing up, mainframes started showing up, supercomputers started showing up. And, I was reminded, as I think about it, that I started learning to program in the summer of 1962. Uh,
Wow.
and I had just graduated from high school in Chicago, and I was about to enter college at the University of Chicago. And uh, I really wanted a job in the research labs of the university because I knew I wanted to study math or physics or something like that. And through an absolutely lucky break, I was able to get a job, and that's when I started to learn to program, and that truly launched my career in computers, etc. And so that was the first one. And let me continue with the other two, and then you can recap your own story. The second one, I would say, and by the way, the computer revolution started with large computers and so on. And then in the 1980s, personal computers came along and so on. And then in the, I don't know, 2010s, we got smartphones. So we saw massive changes in what we call a computer from the time we started and so on. The second revolution was the internet revolution. And that, the internet was a network, and we know about TCP/IP, and we know about the browsers. But even more than just the network and the browser, what the internet revolution introduced is the world of standards. The fact that, before there were networks, before the internet, but they were proprietary. And if you were using IBM system network architecture, you couldn't easily get to somebody else. And all of a sudden, the internet came along and it said, no, we're going to have TCP/IP. Everybody used TCP/IP. And then the World Wide Web came along, and they said, no, we're going to have a browser, and we'll have common web standards. And we said, common web standard, you can access any website, anywhere, whatever. And that was a massive revolution. the evolution from the proprietary technologies of the 60s, 70s, 80s to now the standard-based technologies. And that revolution went on to usher the Linux and open source. And what that revolution enabled is collaborative innovation, that all of a sudden it wasn't each company on its own, it was collaborative innovation. And there were quite a number of companies that didn't like it. And you know what evolution does with a species that refuses to adapt? I don't need to say it, right? And now we are living in our third major technological revolution, which is the world of AI, that, depending on how you count, started in the 2000s or the 2010s, and it continues. And as happened with the other two, there were always lots of opinions, lots of hype, and but Honorio, I find ourselves, you and I, blessed by the fact that in our lifetimes, we've lived through these three major technological revolutions. And despite our increasingly white hair
or no hair,
or no hair, we are here contributing, doing something, doing a podcast. So, that's a blessing. I think we are lucky that we are here.
we we certainly are. We certainly are. I mean, it's a God's gift that we are, at this point, healthy and aware and able to do this. And but this evolution is going to be significantly different because of the access to the technology. And also, I do believe in Ray Kurzweil, over 20 years ago, I think now, wrote the Singularities Near book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're there because a lot of the patterns of evolution of the technology have come together to create this fantastic platform of AI that is so accessible. To the way we talk to computers is different. You can talk to them, and I'm going to give you an example in a minute. And by the way, I heard in the news this morning. I have not had a chance to go look at the article. I know they've been working on it for a while, but NVIDIA announced a new AI chip for the
Yeah,
personal computer.
right. I
So
saw that.
think of that. But the other day, coming back from the MIT Symposium, okay, and I am fascinated by all of the things that I can do with AI. And as you know, I started a company back in August that I'm actually evolving into another company, but I'm also doing all kinds of parallel things. I was amazed the other day coming back from the MIT Symposium on the plane. I am on my phone. I didn't even take the laptop. Okay, free Wi-Fi because I'm a member of the forever of all the programs, Delta, AA,
Right.
whatever. So they're giving me free Wi-Fi. I am on my phone on Claude doing some work, creating some expert agents on Claude, and I don't know how to program. I'm doing it with Claude Note,
Mm-hmm.
and I look around. I'm the oldest guy sitting around there. I see all these young people. It was an early flight.
Mm-hmm.
They're sleeping. They're on social media. They're watching a movie. And that really was, to me, the motivator for suggesting this topic to you today, because I'm looking at all those people. I'm saying, what are you guys doing?
Yes.
Why are you not out there on claw like I am, trying to figure out your future, where you're going, developing yourselves, instead of just sitting there, perhaps with a negative perspective that this AI thing is going to take my job. No, AI is not going to take your job unless you let it.
Yeah, well, but even beyond that, first of all, a lot of the reason is we're still in the early stages of AI. Let's agree on that.
True.
And one of the things that I've been paying a lot of attention in the last few years is how uh, schools are are integrating AI into their education. And let me give you an example. Even a university like MIT, which is one of the top engineering technical universities in the world, quite a few faculty members are worried about students using AI because they are focused on whether they'll be cheating when they do their homework and so on. And, and so here I am. Why do you go to university? Let me talk about university. Let me leave high school and so on alone. You go to a university to help prepare you for your career, correct?
Right.
That that's why you and I did it. AI, not AI in the 60s. We got degrees in technology, in science, whatever, which helped us launch our career. Honorio, can you imagine a career that a graduate of MIT or Stanford or Harvard or University of Michigan, Florida State, University of Florida, pick your favorite uh, college, university, state school. Can you imagine a career where AI isn't going to be one of the most important tools that these young people are going to have to use in their jobs? So yes, we don't know how to teach it yet, and professors often are very conservative. First of all, they are older, they have tenure, they are reluctant to change. But if the job of the school is to prepare young people for the work, then, and if AI is going to be one of the most important tools for them to use in whatever they do in their work, as you were just telling me, you're using Claude when you were flying back to Florida, how can you not help prepare them? Now, the answer is, well, Irving, we're in the early stages. We don't know yet, whatever. And I've had discussions, let's say, with people, faculty at MIT, where some say, well, maybe in engineering and science, you have to use it, but when you go into the humanities and social sciences, I don't know if that counts. Wait a second. In the humanities and social sciences, you are often analyzing lots of works from the past, and you are asking questions about Shakespeare, and you're doing research about Shakespeare and his vocabulary. And now we have this tool that can help you do that research in a more quantitative way that is transforming humanities and social sciences has already been a technical discipline for years because they analyze lots of information, but here is a new tool that is transforming humanities research. So that's a long way of saying that we're still in the early stages.
And Irving, it's let me do an extrapolation because there's a subtle component of change, okay, which is what we're talking about here. And back to the attributed quote to again Darwin, who somebody
Yes,
else sort of reformed what he said, but it's the quote about adaptability. Why is it that today enterprises are complaining that they're implementing AI and they're not getting the results? Because they're trying to put a total new way of thinking, of acting, and I would maybe take that the word tool to the next level, okay, because it's going to be embedded into what you do. So they're taking AI and trying to put it in an all operating model. You know, I mean, you and I have talked
yes,
about the paradox, the solo paradox. So the schools are trying to incorporate AI into an old way of teaching,
yes,
and they're worried about cognitive thinking and all that instead of rethinking the whole
yes,
process. I mean, I two examples real quick. One is going to high school. I had a little bit of a debate with a sixth grade teacher in a very prominent private school in Miami that she has made it illegal to say the words AI and use any
mhm,
technology at all, including laptops, in her class, sixth graders. Are
yeah,
you kidding me? I mean, paper and pencil. I mean, I said, you are doing a real disservice to your students. The other one is a more advanced discussion. A good friend of mine has been given the temporary position at the University of Miami, the Harvard School of Business, which is a very prominent school, in developing the strategy for their online education program. And I had an extensive discussion with him about the AI component in here,
yeah,
and he's thinking about it correctly. You got to change
yes,
methodology of education. A lot
exactly.
of the information that I had to memorize before, that you had to learn, that was just plain old multi, two dimensions, black. I
Yes,
don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to remember all those things because they're available to me and I can get them. They got to change the thought process and say, how do I teach my students
yes,
to learn
yes.
and utilize with AI as an integral component of the process?
Yeah,
And
getting
move
back
forward.
to getting back to Darwin, I think if Darwin were here and we said, Charles, is it Charles Darwin?
Charles, yeah.
Yeah. If we say, Charles, how long does it take for a species to adapt to the changes in the environment? I think he would say, that's a good question. It takes a long time. Wouldn't he say that? Because you have to learn all kinds of new things. Maybe your diet has to change. Maybe the climate has changed and so on. So let me now go back to our history. So I told you I started working with computers as I was entering college at the University of Chicago. And the reason I got the job is because this new computation center was being started by one of the pioneers of using computers in physics and chemistry research. Now you would say, well, that's an obvious thing, right? You use computers to do your research. Well, as it turns out, in the 1960s, computers were just really emerging. And I went on to get you know, master's and PhD in physics at Chicago, but Chicago had lots of, not lot, it had some very eminent professors that were quite a bit older that had studied with Enrico Fermi. In fact, Enrico Fermi himself had been at the University of Chicago, and they grew up in a world without computers, and to them, physics was pencil and paper. You did theoretical research with equations and so on. And when they found out, okay, I'm a student of Professor Rotan, I'm using computers, they would look at me as if that's not physics. That, I'm being totally serious. That is not physics. That is not science. Why? Because computers were new. And again, as Darwin would tell us, it takes a while to get used to that. And of course, that all changed a decade or two later. Let me go back to the internet and open standards. IBM, where I worked for many years, was the leader in mainframes and in proprietary technologies. And when the internet came along, the people who had built IBM as the most successful company on Wall Street in terms of stock price didn't want to accept open standards, didn't want to accept the internet. You know what happened? IBM almost went out of business.
Right, right.
And IBM didn't go out of business because eventually the IBM board told the older generation, guys, you've done a great job, but it's time to retire. And they brought in Lou Gerstner, who was a superb CEO. And as we had discussed, Lou didn't just say we have to embrace what the market is telling us. He wasn't a technologist, but he was totally in tune with the marketplace, which is the equivalent of Darwinism in the world of business. And he said, if the world is embracing the internet and standards, IBM has to do that. And by the way, Irving, I'm going to appoint you the general manager of the IBM's new internet division. So you're the one who has to lead this transformation for IBM, which I did through the 90s and first part of the 2000s.
So Irving, to be very specific in what I said at the beginning of us as examples, that was a very, very pointed event in your life, because you were really one of those guys that were asked to walk out the door, but you adapted. Not only did you adapt, you led the change in the culture of IBM to open standards, and you were one of the and I think most people know out there, that's why you're an MIT fellow and all of those kinds of
Yeah,
things,
yeah,
because you led
yeah,
the development of the internet with the open protocol.
but I'm saying this
You
because
adapted.
I want to get back to the theme of our discussion today. AI is here.
Right.
It's in its early stages. It's a massive technological transformation. We don't know where things will be in 10, 20, 30 years any more than Darwin could have predicted what happened after the asteroid hit and dinosaurs, it changed the environment and so on. But you said, as we were preparing for this, will jobs be transformed? Absolutely. Do young people have to prepare for these new jobs? Well, absolutely. And and we're still in the early stages. That's why you were one of the few people in the plane from Boston back to Florida who was already involved with Claude and so on.
The oldest guy that was around. I didn't see anybody around that looked more than 50 years old. And I'll tell you, and here's the dichotomy. Okay, the dichotomy is that yes, overall, from a very deep technological perspective, the technology is at an early stage, but its application in many places is not.
No.
It's really very advanced. A fellow that I'm talking to about joining forces with what I'm doing in Austin is someone who I known for 20 years. He's done 28 startups. This guy is about as technological as they come, very, very savvy technology guy. He told me, and he is a detailed guy that measures performance and all that, that with AI, his productivity in coding and programming
Yeah.
has gone up 30 times.
Yeah.
30 times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the point I'd make there is get ready, because the species may want to change at the speed of the old day, but we're not going to have the luxury of of accepting that biological change
No, no,
anymore. We better
right.
get with it.
And here is something very important, which is there are quite a few people that are looking at AI as being more intelligent than a human and things like that. That's an interesting philosophical discussion, but it's philosophical. Let's get back to the environment. We have to agree that the advent of computers, let me say in the 60s and beyond, the advent of the internet absolutely transformed everything. Can we agree on that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And didn't matter whether you liked it or not, any more than the dinosaurs didn't have a choice. That's the way it is. Is the internet going to be more intelligent than a human? Who cares? Is the internet transforming markets and jobs and the economy in an incredible way? Yes.
You said the internet. You meant to
I'm
say AI,
sorry,
no?
I meant
Yeah,
AI.
AI. Right. I
It
knew that.
is AI. And what you're saying, and you've been doing this even more than I at this point, that you have been preparing to work with different companies to help them understand how they can take advantage of AI as a tool to get ahead of the game, to be one of the companies that not only survives, but is a leader in the future and so on. And that's the game. I mean, this is not, this is all, we could have a philosophical discussion, but we can do that another time. This gets back to how you have to adjust to the changing environment. And today's environment includes AI and all the information it's making available, all the tools it's making available, all the way of doing things better that it's making available, that you either learn how to leverage in your business and your careers, or you'll be left behind like the poor dinosaurs.
And
I don't know
and
another way to look at this.
that's right, Irving. And one of the opportunities is the amount of free training that is available on the internet for
Yes.
those that want to take advantage of it. So there's no excuse about, oh, I can't afford it. There's so much. You can become an expert in some areas without spending a dime by just clicking on free training. And companies like, Microsoft AI, Nvidia, all of those, Google, I mean, they're offering all kinds of courses. Plus, I mean, just get on LinkedIn and read what people are posting. People are offering materials that are very insightful at
Yeah.
no cost to anybody.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in sort of in a conclusion here, I think that the challenge, there's a challenge at two levels, right? There's a challenge to the institutions.
Yes.
Those of you that may hear us that are in charge of an educational institution, get with it because it is not going away. And the way you're used to teaching is changing
Yes.
drastically.
Hmm.
And you're doing a disservice to your students if you do not adapt. Singularity is here, not near. Okay. And then to the individuals, it's, you know, it, when I started my career, not at the beginning, but after NASA, I ended up working for Burger King, and I was in a management program, and I never forgot a video that I had to watch in one of the courses that I've never been able to. I actually haven't looked at for again, but a phrase came out of that I have never forgotten, and the phrase is the following: it said, "If it is to be, it is up to me."
Yes. Yes.
And it was basically an infant who had not been burned yet by life experience, who was not afraid to climb
Hmm.
and fall and go, not afraid of the dog and touch the
Yeah.
dog. It was a whole series of scenarios illustrating that with that innocence, the fear wasn't there,
Yes.
and in that this baby was trying out everything that was within his reach.
Right.
So if it is to be, it is up to me. It's sort of my conclusion and what I like to leave the and I don't want to say the young people. I want to say everybody out there.
Yes.
Again, with,
Yes.
with us in our late age, as examples of what can be done. Go get it.
Yeah. 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 And go get it means figure out how this tool can be leveraged to help you do whatever you're doing. That's what that
Or,
each
or
one
or
of
pivot
us.
or pivot your career. Pivot your
Yeah.
career.
Well, but pivot your career. I really love the way you started this podcast by referring Charles Darwin and evolution and survival of the fittest. Because for the last, I don't know, 45 minutes, that's what we've been talking about. That um, the environment has changed. Uh, that happens in the world of careers every time a new major technology shows up, it changes the environment. That's been the lesson through the industrial revolution, through the computer revolution, through the internet revolution, and now through the AI revolution. So you look at this as once more, the environment is changing because it introduced a whole new technology. that is going to transform the economy, business, industries, careers. And it's up to those of us who want to keep going and making and so on to figure out how to adapt to it. That at some level, I love the way you frame this from the very beginning, that it's not more complicated than that, is it, Honorio?
It is not. And I tell you, it last week I was in Austin, and I don't know if you remember. I mean, Austin was one of the original test grounds for driverless
Yes, yes,
cars,
yes.
and it was as I walked around downtown Austin, it was sort of settling for me that every 3 to 5 minutes I saw a driverless
Yeah,
car.
yeah, yeah,
Typically in all the other cities in Miami, yeah, you see once in a while, and you hear people that have Teslas that let it drive and all of that.
yeah,
But I never had the experience, the personal experience of being in an environment
yeah,
with so many driverless cars.
yeah, yeah,
It's not an event for Austin anymore. It's a normal thing.
yeah,
So if I'm an Uber driver, you better get ready
yeah, yeah,
because it's coming to a town near you where the
yeah,
driverless cars are going to take over. And people say, "Do you trust a driverless car?" I trust a driverless car better than a human being that makes a lot of mistakes, because we have
yeah,
how many people die every year because of human
yeah,
errors because of car
yeah,
accidents.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. But we
so
know
we're,
the answer.
we're at the standard for driving.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And, I've been looking at this a lot because I've been interacting with a former colleague at IBM who's been very involved in this. We don't know how long it will take. We don't know what forms it will take. But, in the scheme of evolution, let's assume, Honorio, that we're talking about the next 10, 20, 30 years for the deployment of how AI technologies are going to transform in transportation. In the scheme of things, 10, 20, 30 years is not a huge amount. That's, you know, the deployment of technologies takes a while. And again, you have to figure out what's your role in that deployment. That's I don't think it gets any more complicated
Yeah,
than
I,
that.
I agree. So one last thing I'll mention. I mentioned it
Yeah.
to you. We can talk about it in the next webcast. I'm building a tool that's going
Yes.
to. I have already identified 900 positions that are
Yes.
at different degrees of risk, either disappearing or evolving.
Yes.
And I'm developing this tool to help people out there that will help them career pivot and do something about it. So I'm going to leave it at that. But there's a lot of options, and the more I get into this, the more excited I get
Yeah.
about the human being and what they can do today.
Yeah. No,
Instead
I
of
think
sitting there being negative and oh my God, my job is going away, and not doing anything about it.
yeah. Ok, Honorio, como siempre es un placer hablar contigo.
Same here. Mucho gusto, mucho gusto. I know that I understand through your relationship, our podcast is being also featured on Latin Biz
Oh, yes. Yes.
magazine. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I encourage people to go there and watch it as well. And I love this. We are on number 4.
Yeah.
And we'll be posting this with a picture of us that we took at MIT
Yes.
that has been AI
That would be great.
fancied, and
Yeah.
but we will continue. A pleasure, Irving.
Abrazos, Honorio.
Until the next one.
Okay.
Hasta luego.
Honorio, that was great. Estuvo magnífico y sobre todo porque cuando tú trajiste el tema de evolution and Darwin, ese fue algo importantísimo como tema para ver qué está pasando con la tecnología, cómo está transformando el mundo de los trabajos, el mundo de los mercados, las economías. No, eso fue magnífico, Honorio, magnífico.
Gracias, gracias, gracias. Y te digo que mientras más hablo con compañías, la empresa de, porque es más pequeña, ¿no? Uno de mis clientes, la empresa de textiles de Guatemala,
Ujú.
está cambiando el modelo operativo completamente basado en la consultoría que le he dado.
Ok, perfecto.
Sí, están haciendo, cambiando los procesos, pero lo primero que hicieron
Ujú,
fue traer una persona experta en cambio de cultura y de
ujú.
persona, el change
Sí, sí,
management. Eso fue lo
sí.
primero que hicieron,
Ujú.
porque se dieron cuenta de eso. Así
Ok,
que, ok,
Honorio, estaremos en contacto.
nos
Adiós.
vemos. Ya te lo envío. Hasta luego.